Why buy your next vehicle from Community Motors of Mason City?
Great service from 3 locations. Community on Monroe, Community Motors Westside, and Mason City Ford. 10 new franchises and hundreds of vehicles to give you more choices. Plus, Community offers an exclusive 3-3 warranty on pre-owned vehicles and 10-year, 250,000-mile warranty on new. Need more reasons why? Stop or visit CommunityAutoGroup.com.
Because nobody beats a community deal, nobody.
Well, provided you a lot of information. The rest of it was lengthy, but I found a lot of it to be useful for me as I reviewed the study. The chief provided his information related to looking at different shift amounts of 8 hours, 12 hours, 10 and 14-hour shift combination. So he provided his information, and then through the International City Managers Association, I got in contact with a guy that drove the study for Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they've done a number of other communities and pulled out the information they had put in there regarding the shifts. There are pros and cons of each. When you talk 8-hour versus 12, there's a story in here about how 12 is better than 8, but for just general working. But as we look at the 24-hour rotation, seems to be the best that we can get for our level of service, based off the amount of calls we have and staffing. That it's the most economical process that we can use for staffing our fire department. It talks in the white paper about a certain call volume, and that 24-hour shifts make sense for an organization that runs that. I do think that the comments that council made regarding concerns for fatigue and sleep deprivation affecting our fire department staff is valid. And I think that luckily it had already been identified by the fire department, and they had already made changes within their operations to try and mitigate that issue relative to shifting people from just working EMS to splitting between EMS and fire, so they have the capability of getting some rest. So I think that we've made some changes there that I think will mitigate any fatigue issues. And right now, the information that I've seen is that the 24-hour shift is the best place for us to stay at. So I welcome your comments and information. Now, I did talk to the chief. The one that was new to him and I, and also even to Jake, was this issue of this 51S model. It's really intriguing. People basically would bid whether they want to be on a 24-hour shift or a 12-hour shift system. And then you have a certain number of people that you keep on a 24-hour rotation, and they become sort of like the base element for the fire department. And then you put 12-hour shift people in the peak times that you have for calls, so that you have additional help when you need it. How that would fit with us, I don't know that we have discussed with Jake, I don't know if we have a peak time that really requires that much more staffing than we have now, but it was something that we could look at. It's a very new model. There's very few departments that are actually using it, but the person that designed it, created it, has taken what information he has from other departments and run the numbers, and they can save millions of dollars, is the way he puts it. So it's something that I think continues to be, it's a new idea, but it's something that maybe would be looked at in the future.
Mr. Trout.
Mr. Lee, can I ask Chief Glatz?
Hey, Chief.
You read through the 51S, I'm sure.
I looked at it, that's the first time I've seen
What's
it.
your gut reaction? Or Jim, I mean, what's your
Well,
gut reaction on that?
Looking at it, I think we're staffed at 11, 10 and 11 most of the time. If I was to take 4 people out of that mix and put them on a 12, there's gonna be times where I'm sitting with 6 people to fight a fire. That's pretty tough to do. I mean, even responding to a fire with 10 or 11, you've got a lot of things to do in a short amount of time. So even callbacks, your callback people are 20 minutes out. So initial fires are dealt with what you have there at the time. So if we have a fire during those non-peak times, we're sitting there with potentially 6, 4, if an ambulance is out, 2, if 2 ambulances are out. So I think it really depletes your staffing to the point that I don't think it's worth the risk.
one thing I had written down here is, do we, and I guess Mr. Trout kind of addressed it, do we know if there's a high call time for us, like during the day or a year? And 24-hour time, do we get more calls at a certain time, block of time?
Between
When
1
is that?
1 and 10 at night. Between 1 and 10 at night is our busiest time.
Between 1 in the afternoon and 10 at night?
Yes.
We're talking EMS, right? Do
Yeah.
you know numbers roughly? I guess.
I don't have, I mean, I can get that stuff for you. We can track every day, every hour of the day, when our call volumes are, so.
I've got charts
You got charts that can show?
that shows the per hour increments. Yeah. The peak times.
You know, when we first brought this up, I remember overtime was a big issue. The more I look at it, I don't know if that should be our issue. But as I read this report, and I found another one online from Dominic Sweeney, I don't even know where he's from, but the fatigue issue, I know we've said fatigue wasn't an issue here, but it has been an issue throughout this country. And there has been accidents, and he talked about this, there's a loss of the guy was on his 48th hour of a double shift because he decided someone called in sick, I'll take it, he's running an ambulance, kill somebody. Well, they equate that to be driving drunk, and the city was 8% responsible, he was 20% responsible for that accident. And so, I guess that's where my red flag comes in. I mean, do we have guys that double shift 48 hours? To me, that's not good. If I was 24 years old and young and dumb again, now I'm just not young, but I'd take that 48-hour shift. You know, I get it, but looking at it, you're on your 46th hour and someone needs an ambulance and you gotta run to Charles City, Iowa City, wherever. I mean, I don't know it all, but I'd like to see a policy that says you can't get behind a wheel or something. I don't know the time periods, I don't know, but that is a concern for me. No longer the overtime is a health concern to me after I read this information.
One thing I found interesting was, on the sleep deprivation studies, one study found the most effective shift is a 48 on, 96 off. I don't understand why that would be. They're saying working 48 hours.
Is there a block where they
That's a
have to
national
match them?
trend. That's a
Yeah.
national trend in some areas, either to go to the 48 on, 96 off, or to actually go to a 4-platoon system with a work 24-hour shift and then having 3 complete days off, both to reduce the hours.
Okay, what happens after 48 hours? The next shift comes on and they're short. Those 48 hours can't take it?
We break up our overtime in 8-hour increments. So somebody's generally not gonna come in and work a full another 24. They're gonna come in and work 8 hours of that 24. If we even call back.
Let me think for a second. Go ahead.
Generally, but it does happen.
It does happen. Well, usually when that will happen is if somebody is holding for somebody else for time. But generally, there's not anybody coming in and working a 24-hour on top of a 24.
And I know public is different than private, but even when you talk sleep deprivation and work schedules, even like in my industry with trucking, you can't work more than a 14-hour shift. That driver needs 10 hours rest before he can start his shift again. So I don't see how, and then again, I know it's different, I don't see how federally, when you're talking a truck driver driving down the road, he can't work more than 14 hours, he can't drive more than 600 miles or whatever it is, and you gotta pull him off the road. But we can work guys 24, 48 hours. We can have plow drivers plow for 18, 20 hours at one crack either. And again, to me, it's a safety issue more than anything. And I don't think 8-hour shifts is realistic, because it would create way too much. I do like the idea of the 12-hour model. Why would that, my question is, why would we need 9 additional personnel if we went, because you would technically, you're just splitting it in half, couldn't you split your crew?
If I split my crews in half, 2 things. Again, it's similar to where I've got 6 people in the building. I'm trying to fight a fire with 6 people. I also have ISO, which rates our city as far as insurance rates. If I'm showing up with less personnel, if I have less personnel on duty, I cannot deliver the service I need to do, our ratings go up. So instead of a 3, we might move to a 4 or a 5 in our ratings, which then affects everybody's insurance rates.
So currently, how much average a year are we paying out in overtime fire department?
Last year, it was about 53,000.
Total overtime?
On the fire side.
Fire
On
side.
fire.
EMS is
Ambulance
different.
is over 100, it was like 130 or 140.
Ambulance, we budget that much because we know we're gonna have transfers, we hire people back for transfers. So that's an in-out.
That makes
We charge revenue for that. It's a line item we have to put in there.
We've been budgeting 40,000 the last 2 years for overtime. We haven't been able to meet it, but we've been averaging 52 to 60 for overtime for the fire side of the building.
And with that, we are dropping, 41% of the time, we are down to 10 people instead of the 11th. And as I said in my memo, that 11th person really is, it takes one person from working 12 hours on an ambulance to put them on the ambulance for 24 hours, just because of that one person gone. So it is an inconvenience or a safety issue when that 11th person is not there.
But that was clearly the impacting our overtime the most, calling back for the vehicle.
Absolutely.
That's just the part of the safety issue. That just boggles my mind, to be honest.
I know, it's a different standard for different folks.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't disagree with you. It's been something the fire service has been looking at for probably 5 years. And that's one of the reasons we went to that switch of 8-hour duties, or 12-hour duties. To give those people that have been running, if they've been running hard during the day, then they switch to the night. I mean, they might still have to go on the call, but they're not primary care. They don't have to do the reports. So it gives them, actually, it's a sense of less stress and downtime too when you're off that final 12. So that has probably been the most effective thing we have done. I don't know of anybody else that's doing it. It's something our deputy chiefs come up with, and it seems to be a good
West Hawaiian, yeah, there's.
a good change, so. It is a concern. I mean, it's right up there on concerns we have for safety for our people, so.
Scan.
You done?
Go ahead.
First, just want to start by saying, I'm not even sure who this came from, but I respect, bringing this forward. I think sometimes, we get something on agenda and people, we're gonna ram it down people's throats, and I think it's healthy to bring items like this up and have discussions about it. At the same time, from what Mr. Schweitzer with Local 41 has sent to us, and Brent's memo and Chief's memo, I just, not to use a horrible cliche, but I don't want to micromanage from a council table to say, do this. What I would rather see is suggestions. I think the two major concerns are safety, overtime. It's probably the two biggest ones. To put it back on you guys to come to us with suggestions. You're the ones that are there every day and say, here's where we could potentially see some more efficiencies as far as overtime or improvements with safety concerns like Councilman Higbee was talking about, rather than us coming and saying, do this. So that's kind of where I'm at and at this point.
That relates to the decision that I made probably, 3 years ago now, to go to 10. When I got here and we started looking at the overtime and the way it was going, it had always been a given thing that the 11th person was called back for. And we know that it shorts the department, and it's questionable with regards to whether it impacts things specifically, but it also is something that could be managed. And we hope that it doesn't happen too often, that everybody can make it to work, but every once in a while it does. But it also had a big impact on our budget, and so we went to it and continue to ask the chief to, let me know when there are issues relative to it. And we don't allow to go down to 9. We always call back if for some reason we're forced to go down to 9. We always call back for at least the 10th person, because it really would damage capability, because you wouldn't have enough to go to a fire. You got 2 ambulances out, you have 5 to go to a fire. It's just not going to work to have that as our functioning.
Do we know if, and this is just kind of thinking out loud, neighboring or any communities throughout the state that have policies that say, after a certain amount of hours on, you can't be,
Florida.
I'm just thinking.
I don't know of any offhand. I would imagine somebody
So
sent some policies.
they've bargained that, yeah, that's in their contract.
What do you think of that? Would that be something? That, like I said, the money, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to call that.
It's all right, Mr. Lee. Mr. King, do you have anything before?
No.
Okay.
I apologize.
Go ahead, Mr.
Like I said, the money, I don't know, for some reason that doesn't bother me so much on this one, it's the safety issue. And if somebody here said, you know what, we understand after being on a job for 18 hours, you can, or whatever, you can't get behind the wheel or something, I'd like to see that worked out. You guys can work it out somehow, but don't get me wrong, money is, but you guys are around what's budgeted. It's the safety issue. After more and more I read about that, to me, that gets me.
Well,
I
and
know
a
you're
lot of-
talking about driving, but, you know, at the same time, if, you know, my 5-year-old or my 2-year-old or my wife, are hurt, and they need EMS or whatever it is, I don't care about the driving portion, I want the guy or the gal who has been on for 4 hours. I don't want the one that's been on for 18 or 19. I love y'all, I'm telling you, I want the fresh one. It doesn't matter whether it's surgeons or someone driving down the road or whatever. I mean, there is a depletion of capabilities. You would have to go to significant lengths to persuade me that 48 hours, someone working 48 hours is efficient. That would be pretty difficult. I mean, we all live life every day and we go to sleep after, what, 10 o'clock? We're tired. So, and I know Mr. Hickey's got, he happens to work in that industry and we've got pretty strict standards on it. So, just a comment on my part. Anybody else? Ms. Silver?
Have we researched any other communities the size of ours to see what they do?
We
And
know the information. Most are running 24s and 12s.
I can tell you across the state of Iowa, if you want me to. Okay.
But most are
We
running
can put a
24s or
report
12s. That's, there are, majority are running 24s, but some are running 12s.
That are strictly EMS. No fire.
Yeah.
All fire.
Most are doing
Ms.
24s.
Solberg, go ahead.
I was gonna continue and I just totally
I
lost
know,
it
that's
with
why it's
that.
important not to interrupt. Go ahead. We can come back to you. Anybody else? Mr. Hurd.
Well, I think this has been a healthy exercise, because this is something that I've never participated in a discussion about, and it was educational for me. If I'm gleaning the right information from the information that's been shared with us, it shows me that the current overtime process that we have is the most cost-effective of the alternatives that we have before us. And I appreciate knowing that, because overtime's been a concern. For me, it hasn't been so much the bottom line on overtime, it's been the overruns on overtime, because that's unbudgeted, which force amendments, and I've always been a person, you guys know this, that wants an accurate budget when we pass the budget. And there's always gonna be things that come up that force changes, but I don't like the recurring things. I wanna learn as we can, and I know that a lot of this is your best guess, but I think we have enough historical data that we ought to be able to continue zeroing in on budget time and what's the right amount to budget. And that's my biggest concern. I've been sitting here trying to figure out the right way to say this without offending anybody, and I can't, so I'm just gonna say what I'm thinking. Honestly, I don't feel like I'm qualified to pass a judgment on safety on the way we run our shifts at the fire department. I just don't know anything about firefighting or EMS, and that's not a dig at anybody, honestly, it's not. I just don't feel qualified to participate in that discussion, and I have to believe that the people at the fire department are as concerned, probably more so, about safety than any of us ever could be, because you guys are the ones that are living it. I agree completely with the way Councilman Kuhn put it. I don't think any potential change in shifts at the fire department or the police department could ever come from the council down and be successful, because we're not in your shoes. My hope would be that, given the information you shared with us, the level of comfort that I know that I have from the process, that as we continue working through lean processes and getting educated at the staff and employee level, that we all start looking for opportunities and maybe new ways of doing things that none of us have thought before. And if there's a viable way, maybe this 51S thing is worth pursuing. I don't know, maybe it's not. At this point, I don't really care. But if anybody sees a viable way that maybe we could make a change that would not impact safety, but have a beneficial cost impact, bring it forward. I think we're all for that. We know what's going on with retirement funds for police and fire, and the forecasts on those funds are downright scary. And so we all have to be looking for ways to try to cut costs if we can, if for no other reason, just to maintain status quo. And of course, none of us want to sacrifice safety. I mean, that's very clear from what we're talking about here. So I thank you for the information. I appreciate it, and it's been educational.
Thank you, Mr. Marquis. Anybody else? Ms. Olber.
I remembered my question. I was writing it down as Scott was talking about it, but my question was, did you learn anything at the lean convention in regards to, firefighting? and
Well, I don't
how
know,
it
the chief
worked?
went to the last one, and I don't know, you learned a lot about customer service issues and,
I mean, one
process
process
walk.
So
That
it could
was-
come up in future discussions
no
with
doubt.
that.
Yeah, very
Okay.
well. And he's already asked to go to the next one on the 28th for, another one that I think will be good for the fire department is, and they already do some of it, is the 5S, where putting items back in the same spot where they're supposed to be. And the police, fire and police are already doing some of that. They standardize where things are located, and they standardize the way they work. So I think they're gonna be able to, they're already kind of doing it on their own. So I think that formalizing the process that they use, and that'll make a difference with safety and some of the other items that they do. So I really believe that the chiefs have both been they went to the last one and already wanted to sign up for the next one, so.
Great.
Very good, thank
Chief.
you.
Just a few comments. Another trend that's coming out in the fire service recently is power naps throughout the day, giving people time to take a power nap. They've seen that as a viable alternative, I guess, when they're working a 24-hour shift. The other thing is, a lot of our over-the-roads in the middle of the night are people that are off duty. We don't send people on duty unless it's an emergent transfer. I mean, if there's somebody that has to go now, we're going to send them over. Most of our transfers are within an hour, they'd like the transfer to leave. So those are people that have been off for the day. Hopefully they've gotten some sleep, and people can refuse. There are times where we don't fill a transfer because either they're not comfortable or whatever the case, and I'm not going to push somebody into doing it. So it's kind of a self-assessment too on people, whether they're able to do that or not. Other people, myself, I'm a driver. I can drive almost any time. Other people can't. So if they don't feel comfortable, they don't take the call. So I just wanted to add.
Anybody else? Ms. Hickey?
On the lighter side, what's a body rhythm? That's been bothering me.
It's the normal rotation that they do in their daily activities and how they function, and doctors have found that it seems to be like 24 hours is better than nothing. I don't know if it's true, that's what one doc said. What I read. It's all right.
I know. All right, anybody else? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Trout, thank you, staff, good job. Thank you, council, for